Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. In a world that's constantly racing, around here we believe the first way that you can slow down is to listen and then move with intention. I'm your host, Kendra Chapman, caffeine lover, mom of triplets, school principal, and someone who embraces country living. Each week, we delve into conversations with fascinating people who are making the world a better place by focusing on what matters most, slowing down. So if you are tuning in for the first time or you're a long-time listener, I want to say thank you for being here. We are hitting all-time numbers on our downloads. I think right now on my podcast downloads, I had over 700 this last month, and I want to continue growing. My goal now is 1,000 downloads a month. So if I can keep that going and raising the bar, and I can only do that with your help. So please share. And if you haven't already, I hope that you subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss another episode, and you can hopefully share with a friend or two that might need this message. It means a lot to me if you do that, because that means I can keep bringing you content like this every week. This is your invitation to reflect, realign, and move forward with purpose. Today's guest is someone who cuts through the self-help noise and brings us back to what really matters: truth, identity, and freedom by being authentic and true to yourself. I'm joined by Peter Kolot, also known as Polish Peter. He's the author of Authentic Self-Rebirth. He's the creator of the 7 Human Drives framework, which is in his book. And he's also a transformational coach who has impacted thousands of entrepreneurs and high achievers around the world. In this conversation, we're diving in to what it really means to live authentically by stripping away the noise, slowing down so you can actually accelerate the life that you're meant to live. Let's get started. Peter, thank you for agreeing to come on the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking to see if we can go slow or go fast on this podcast, right?
Yes. So before we get into your story, could you just share a little bit about how you go slow?
Well, that's a really good question. That's not something that I usually get at the beginning of the podcast interview. So how I go slow? Well, I spend time in the quiet time in the mornings and throughout the days. I'm a Christian, so I spend time with the Lord from my own perspective, you know what I mean? But the way I go slow is I get intentional with the specific things in my life during the specific moments in my life. Like morning routine is one of those things. So that's how I go slow in life.
That's nice. Do you mind, just for all the audience, listeners and viewers out there, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about what that might look like? Maybe like what time of the day do you wake up typically? Like what does your morning routine look like?
Yeah, so I don't have an alarm clock. I never liked alarm clock, so I just decided that I'm not going to have an alarm clock. And so I wake up in the morning, whatever I do. Usually it's like, I would say around 7, 8-ish. And I literally go downstairs, grab myself a cup of coffee. That is one of my kind of like an anchors. And I go in my spot. I have a specific spot. And that anchor, I go, and first thing I do, I spend time with the Lord. So I go in the Bible. I'll read some verses, listen to some passages from there, and think about this, meditate. What does this mean? How does this apply to my life? And things like that. And then I go into some form of a training to get my mind going, or like some kind of a not a motivational, but something that will really impact my life and my day, for a better. I go look from that, and then I look from the perspective: what are the top 3 things that I want to accomplish today? So on a basic level, this is what I do. Sometimes this takes me half an hour. Sometimes it takes me an hour and a half. It all depends, but I have the space to be able to do that. And then, so that's the majority of mine. And I don't want to go to the other hygienic stuff because I think people already know how that works. But I go there and I start my day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've started my podcast asking every guest so far just how they go slow. So it's always interesting to see how everybody does it a little differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about, first for me, it's making that connection with, like for me, with Christ and for connection with me at the beginning of the day. You know what I mean? And set myself up in a space that I feel like empowered. Because if I feel like, at the beginning of the day, if you think your day is going to go horrible, guess what? Majority of the time, that's what's going to happen. This is one of my big anchor points at the beginning of the day to make sure that my day goes off to a good start.
Yes. Were you always somebody who leaned on your spirituality? No.
Oh, well, so I was raised in the Catholic Church. And, if you know anything about Catholics, I mean, up until I was 14 years old, I was supposed to be a priest, and I
Mm.
was an altar boy and did all that kind of stuff. And in fact, I remember my aunt saying that we're finally going to have a priest in our family. So she was all excited. However, then 14-year-old boy, like came to the United States and all that went out the window. So, but I was never really like spiritual. You know what I mean? Like there was a religion in the house, but never spiritual. And that basically came into really like connecting on a deeper level. And probably I would say in my mid-30s.
Okay.
That's why I started looking into that.
Yeah. Like you, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school all my life until college. And so I was always around it. And the one thing, I would say I'm more spiritual than I am practicing Catholic now in my older years, but I still know that I am a small speck in the universe and there is something greater. And it's humbling to think about, how much that can affect your daily life if you just allow that to come through. So, you know, from one Catholic to another, I understand completely. Yeah. And it's comforting in a way to know that you can go anywhere around the world and go into any Catholic church and always felt at home when I went to other countries into a Catholic church. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, there is some kind of a connection that connects all of us, you know what I mean? And if you recognize that, then when you start to interact with different people around life, whether they're, black, white, green, yellow, whatever they might be, all of a sudden there is a connection piece that keeps us together. And it allows you to be able to be open with them and connect with them and talk to them, not be afraid of people to talk to them, especially when you're doing business.
Yes, absolutely. So you are a businessman, a coach, breakthrough coach, and you are an author. So do you want to just kind of share a little insight in how you got started on those goals from when you started thinking about what you wanted to do to make an impact in the world? Where did it all start?
Well, so I mean, from the business perspective, I would say it started when I was a kid. I hate to admit it. I was born in Poland. So that's not the part I hate to admit, okay? I was born in Poland and I lived there up until 14 years old. Now, during my young years, the part that I hate to admit is that I used to live in the southern Poland where there was a big tourist area. We had a lot of tourists coming into our country, into that part of the Poland. And we would catch field mice and we would sell them to the tourists as like a homemade, like a hamster kind of a thing. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, maybe because I was a kid or whatever, we sold some stuff. So I think that entrepreneurial kind of a thing was very early on. And I always looked to I used to collect these for us back in Poland, like a Coca-Cola cans or beer cans was like a collector's thing. Like it was a big deal back then. And we would collect them, we would trade them and those kinds of things, right? Then I started doing stamps. So I was always kind of looking from that perspective. Then when I moved here, went to high school, went to college, got a degree in architecture, went into the architecture world, like working for a company. I was an architect doing a lot of the different, developments. I live in Michigan. And what I've quickly noticed is I don't really like having people tell me what to do. You know what I mean? Especially bosses. So that was kind of like this one thing that kind of popped up. And the other thing, I had this something within me that felt like, okay, I was built for something more kind of a thing, right? So then I started my own company from that perspective. So on the business side, that was the when it started. Then on the coach side, what happened in at the end of 2010 2011, I ended up getting divorced and I went into what I call an optimistic depression. And over the next 2 years, I'm in that space, kind of living, kind of beating myself up over. And at one point, I came to connect with this guy named Jason, and he brought me into a mastermind group with a company called Lifener. As I was in this mastermind group and I was, talking with people and sharing what's going on, and I was always curious with what's going on with human beings, like their the whole psychology of the brain, how it works. And I would keep asking questions and I would poke at them and I would start to be able to pull some things out of the people that they would normally didn't see for themselves. You know what I mean? Like these blind spots. And as I started doing this, people kept saying to me, you should be a coach because you have the neck of it. And I never really thought that I did, but just coming back over and over and over and over again, people kept telling me. So that's when that was born and started doing that. Now, also during that particular time, my journey, my life, what I started doing is writing a vision for my own life. Because up to this point, I mean, back in the day, I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Kiyosaki. I also read the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And then they talk about having a vision, right? The vision. And if you're, Christian, if you're Catholic or whatever, you look in the Bible and it says, without vision, people perish, right? So I've had that. But it never clicked for me to have a vision for my own life. Like, what do I want my life to look like? So that's when I started to kind of recognize that in that mastermind. So I wrote the vision, and on that vision, one of the things that I wrote is write a book. So that's been on that vision for several years. And now it finally came to the fruition because I believe that if you put something on a vision, you're going to start taking action towards that, and eventually it's going to come to fruition. So that was like a long explanation, but that's kind of how it all came about. So your life kind of creates your story and what you're up to and what you're going to be doing moving forward for people. I believe that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it sounds like you were motivated from a very young age to make something of yourself. It's just how you operated in the world. And so then from there, you started figuring out what your goals were going to be. And, you have a book now. You had it written down years ago, and now you have your book out there. And I'm sure it's one of many. Authentic Self-Rebirth. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, one of many. I'm a talker, not a writer, so we'll see if that happens. More books coming, okay? Because this was a no small feat, but the book is what I found since the COVID times. During the COVID and post-COVID, I think a lot of people are feeling like, what the heck is going on as far as they're feeling lost, maybe, you know what I mean? And what I've also discovered is that our entire lives, if you really think about from very young age, we have been told how we need to act, who we need to be, the beliefs that we've been put on. Like, I need to be, let's say, a people pleaser in order to get some kind of a, appreciation, something that people like me, that I appreciate about me, in order to get that. So I need to become this version of myself. So if you really look at it over the years, since very young age, I believe we became this version of ourselves. And then we go into the personal development space and we don't like certain things about how it played out because we don't have the life that we wanted or whatever the case may be. And the underlying message there is, in a way, there's something wrong with you, needs to be fixed, needs to be changed. You need to fix, you need to change. So there's an underlying message of fixing, right? What I believe is what ends up happening, we keep trying to change and fix the version of us that is been learned over the years. However, if you really look from the perspective of who am I truly, authentically, before I started learning how I need to be based on what the world tells me to be, that's the authentic self, right? That doesn't need to be changed. That's not broken. We might be living in a broken world because of all those different things, but we are not broken. So my entire message in this book is to help people get back to their authenticity, help people get back to the truth for who they really are. Because when you feel that, you feel like you are in purposeful, like you're fulfilled, like you are actually living life that you were meant to live here, kind of a thing. So the book, it's got two different sections. One that's called the awakening section, where in that section, how people uncover, like, how did I came to be the way I am? Because once you awaken from that, now you have something to actually, do something with it, right? And then there is a rebirth, what I call a rebirth process to get back into authenticity. So it's like a pretty manual because I have videos in there. People can watch the videos, interact with it. There's exercises in there. So you can read it like a book, and you can read it like a manual. You can go on the website, watch some of the videos that are included in the chapters and all kinds of different things. So at the end of the day, it's the book title basically says The Authentic Self-Rebirth, getting back to your authenticity.
So, knowing that this book can really help so many of the listeners and viewers out there to kind of figure out how to get
Mhm,
there, do you have any, it sounds like you have a framework to kind of
mhm.
walk people through that discovery process? Or would you say once they come through that awakening, then they go through your
Well, that's
7
the
steps?
process. The framework is, the first part, like I said, is the awakening. So I'll give you an example. So one of the chapters on there is about fear because people are fearful about it. And I deconstruct what fear is and how it's not really real. And,
Hmm.
and I talk through this. So when they go through this, they start discovering what my fears are. So once you discover what those fears are and you start seeing that maybe that fear is not real as I make it look to be, so maybe I can actually step through it. And then when you step through it, you take certain steps to get through that fear. All of a sudden you're on the other side and you're like, well, that wasn't so bad. I was fearful about this. It's not so bad, right? So when I
Hmm.
share example, for instance, like my fear was I was afraid of water for the longest time because when I was little, I almost drowned, right? So there was that. So I use that as an example to help people, let go of the fears. Now think about this. If you were able to let go of some of the fears that you have, how would life be? It'll be pretty incredible, right? So that's just one of those things. I have this, 7 human drives framework that I talk about in there, the beliefs, the values that we have that we've learned, where they come from, those kinds of things. Once you go through that process of kind of like being aware of yourself, now you kind of have a power of like, okay, you know what? I can choose to keep believing that, or I can choose to believe something else, right?
Hmm.
And when you do that, all of a sudden you start to operate differently in your life.
Yeah. It sounds like the process could probably work for you more than once too, because maybe you overcome a fear, but then 10 years later, you need to tackle something different,
Yeah,
maybe.
listen, I think it is in some way an ongoing process, you know what I mean? Because of the fact that a lot of the stuff is blind spots. We do have blind spots in our lives, right? And but at the same time is a lot of it is when we start looking at our life and the authenticity of it. And in fact, at the end of the book, I have them actually write out the vision for their own authentic self. So whatever that vision is, now let's live into that vision. So the more you keep repeating over and over and over again, becomes more you, right? Because it's more natural to you because you already are that person. So that is the like actual steps, right? What are some of the things that I can put in life? What are my morning routine look like, right?
Hmm.
So that's when you start
Right.
doing this, you start and buy it, and now you start living it more and more like that person.
Yeah. So if you walk through that process, you can uncover any of those wounds from childhood and tackle those. Then, like you said, you went through a divorce, so you had a challenge there with depression, you said. So
Mhm.
you kind of worked through that as well. So things are going to come up. And so the more you think about how you're going to address them with your approach of whatever you value, right? Your beliefs, your values, how you're going to handle that head on is going to help you moving forward as well, not just with the stuff that's happened in the past. So that sounds helpful. And you are a speaker as well. You've been on many stages sharing your story.
Yep. Yeah, we speak around the country. We have events going around, around the country for the last 10, 11 years. Yeah.
What's the energy like out there? Are you feeling like many people are coming online and awakening, or do you feel like it's just kind of getting started?
I would say I think a lot of people are awakening. I think there's something happening. I don't know. I can't explain what that is, but I feel like a lot more people are awakening, because of the fact that I don't know whether it was the COVID that started it all or whatever. But I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot more people are awakening
Yeah.
in their
And
own
more
ways. You
people
know what I
are
mean?
listening to your message? Would you say more people are open to your message, or
Yeah, they're more
your
curious,
audience
right?
is?
I think there's a curiosity there, and I hope they're more open because I will tell you this from my own experience. It has helped me tremendously. You know what I mean? And because it helped me tremendously and allowed me to let go of the fears and allowed me to let go of who I need to be, how I need to show up. And in order to make sure that I don't make people angry or make them upset or whatever, trying to control how other people react to me. Good luck with that, by the way, right? And all those kinds of things. I want to help people with that, And because then what ends up happening, you become a lot more yourself when it comes to relationship with your wife, with your husband, with your kids, with anybody in your life. You know, and I think it ends up transforming some of these relationships.
Yeah. And the reason why I was asking that, painting a picture of you authoring a book, being a very driven individual from the beginning, and then setting out with those goals and meeting those goals, and now speaking on many stages and seeing what's out there in the world and kind of the way people are receiving it. Are you seeing that you need to hustle more? Are you seeing that your lifestyle is different than maybe it was 10 years ago? Like, how has that progressed?
Different than it was 10 years ago. I mean, I used to hustle. That was my thing, hustle. What ended up happening, my business back then took over my life. I was working 80, 90, sometimes pulling all-nighters because the answer was that, to me, at least back then. And what I've discovered over the years since then, that the less I work, the more I make. I know it's counterintuitive, looks weird, but what ends up happening is that in order for me to work less, I need to let go of certain things in my business and allow other people, other things to step into that place to be able to do that. Like, I'll give you an example. I had a belief that I learned from very young age, growing up with my aunt and my uncle, and watching my uncle build his entire house by himself with his own two hands in his own workshop. And he built furniture, everything in it. Everything had to be perfect.
Mm,
Like how everything fits with that thing. And he took his time and care and all those things, right? So two big beliefs were instilled in me. Everything needs to be done right, perfectly. And actually three beliefs. One is that. Two, if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it better, right? Kind of a thing, right? So I have to do it myself. And three, hard work is the answer.
mhm.
You hard work is the way you're going to get ahead in life. And I had to let go of some of those beliefs. And the more I started doing it and putting into my calendar, allowing other people to step into it, and maybe do what I believe was 80% of the time, of what I was able to do, the life started to shift in much more peaceful way, And so today, I would say the hustle doesn't excite me really. I'm not like all about hustle, hustle, hustle. Now, here's the thing: when I work during my business hours, so it's
Mhm,
for like, let's say from 10 to 3, I work like my hair is on fire. So I'm
mhm.
not saying I'm not doing that, you know what I mean? And obviously, hopefully, I'm doing a pretty good job because the hair is still here, right? But I work like my hair is on fire. So I'm being very intentional. But I am
Mhm.
not being like I used to when it's, working 20, 30 hours kind of thing a day kind of a thing, as much as I can squeeze into that day kind of, you know what I mean? I
Yes.
hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I think the more and more we realize how to delegate maybe minor tasks to AI, embrace some of that,
Hmm.
and not do all the heavy lifting and all those small tasks that take up a lot of time. That might be one example of the way that you free yourself up so you can do the deep thinking and the creating and the building, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that. And people, I mean, you surround
Mhm.
yourself with. And
Mhm.
then also understanding that thing about I have a list, right? In my business that needs to be done,
Mhm.
accomplished, or whatever, whether it's me or somebody else. That list, I don't think is ever going to get down to zero, and that's okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Back then in the hustle, I had to eliminate everything off my list, and it was stressing me out to a point where couldn't even sleep very well. You know what I mean? Because I have this looming list there that I need to get tackled. But once I understand that, all of a sudden, I just go and tackle things as they go, and and guess what? I'm still here.
Right. Right. Our list is never going to be zero. So we just
Yeah.
have to, like you said, accept that and be okay with that. Yeah. And live for the moment.
Right. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, for anybody out there right now who is listening to this conversation and thinking, well, my life, I'm just so busy all the time and I'm not seeing, my goals being met, what would
Hmm.
be your advice to a person like that who is working hard but not seeing the benefits yet?
Well, so a couple of things. One, do you have a vision for your life? Ask yourself if you actually have a written vision for what you want your life to look like. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm literally speaking from experience. Like back in the day, I had a vision for my business. I know what I wanted my business to be built, the business plan, right? Kind of a thing. And guess what? That took over my life. So now I have a vision for my life. It's a one-page document. It's written in the present tense, what I do want as opposed to what I don't want, what I want my relationships to look like, my family, my wife, my kids, my other relationships, my health, all those, my spiritual walk, all kinds of different things, all written in one pager. And then I look from the perspective, okay, how do I build or expand or whatever you want to call it, that business to support that life? If you have a 2 job, it's a little bit of a different conversation because between 8 and 5. But if you want to keep doing 9 to 5, the W2, that's good. But look from the perspective, how is that supporting my vision? So when you look from that lens, you kind of flip it upside down when the vision comes first. And then how does this work life is going to support it? You start to put different things in life in a different way on your calendar. So that's number one. And number two, I would say examine what's driving you to have life this way. Because if you really think about this, at the end of the day, who's the common denominator in all those different things in your life? Well, you are, right? So what ended up creating that? Whether it's the beliefs, whether it's I am just looking to stay busy, because if I'm busy, then I feel like I'm productive. But it's not really, I'm not really doing the things I should be doing. I'm just staying busy. What are the beliefs? Is it the belief like a people pleaser? Is it the belief about being, doing everything myself because it has to be perfect, right? The perfection. Or is it that, squirrel syndrome that we talk about, like shiny object syndrome? What's driving this bus? Now, when you start to recognize that, then so that's what's actually happening. So now let's tackle that, right? And whether it's putting things on the calendar, whether it's, offloading to other people, delegating and things like that, eliminating some of those things, you start to shift how your life starts to move forward from this point on. But you take more of a charge of your calendar as opposed to this calendar being in charge of you. That makes sense?
Yes. Yeah. And give us a little glimpse on what your calendar looks like. Do you make time for deep thinking and creating and writing? Like, do you block all that out, or is your calendar, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it. Do you leave chunks of time wide open? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I have, like I said, between 10 and 3, I have my work hours, and sometimes these work hours becomes the deep thinking. Sometimes it becomes little action steps, right? But I also, what I did back then, because if you notice, like in the conversation several times I mentioned about people pleaser. So, hi, my name is Polish Peter. I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? So I've recognized that about myself. I would say yes to everyone and everything. So what I did early back in the day when I started shifting this, becoming more authentic, I literally on my calendar would put gym 3:30, 6:00 dinner, right? I would put things on my calendar that seem like, yeah, you do that every day. Why would you put it on there? But what it was doing for me when I did that is, one, it was blocked off. So nobody was able to take over that time, right? And two, what ended up happening is if something didn't work, like someone would want me to say yes to them about something, I would just blame it on my calendar. I would just blame it on my vision in my head, or maybe even sometimes verbally. And now I'm no longer the bad guy. The calendar is the bad guy. The vision is the bad guy. So now the people pleaser in me doesn't feel bad about, going and saying no to someone. So I've literally put things in my calendar, whether it's the morning routine, whether it's, like I have the students that I coach, they have access to my calendar. It's a well-defined window, and they book themselves in. Once that's booked, nobody else is coming on there. So then when I'm getting on a coaching call with them, I'm 100% in that conversation because that calendar allows me to be intentional and present in that very moment because one, that's what's booked out. And two, I know that the other things are booked out later on. So I don't have to worry about not forgetting that. So I can be present in this conversation because then later on, that thing comes. Like after we're done here, I have a coaching call, one more. And after we're done, then I go to the gym. So everything is kind of in place on that. So the calendar kind of manages my life, but guess who's in charge of the calendar? Me. So when it comes to doing that, all of a sudden it becomes more structured. At the same time, it becomes simpler, if that makes any sense. My life, how it's put together.
Yes, it does. And I'm thinking that you probably prioritize, based on what you've shared so far, you're prioritizing family time,
Hmm.
your gym time, so that's your health. You're looking at all those routines and what you value to fill your calendar, and not just meetings.
Bingo. Yep, you're
Mhm.
right. Now,
Mhm.
remember I
Mhm.
talk about the vision? So I have a priority. Like I remember I was very clear that back in the day when the things didn't work out for me in my life, which ended up in a divorce partially, is if I really look at the value system that I had, it was business, then it was kids, then it was wife, and then it was God kind of thing. That didn't work for me very well,
Yeah.
obviously. So what I
Right.
did is I looked from the perspective, what do I want my value system to be? And today it's God, wife, kids, business, and everything else. So when I go and start putting these things on my vision, guess what's number one at the top? It's God. Number two is
Mhm.
wife. Number three, kids, and so forth, right? So then when I go and put it on my calendar, that's how I put those things on the calendar first. And guess what? At the end of it, what's left over gets for the business. And that's, in fact, how I ended up in 20 hours a week. And then I had to figure out how to get the business going. So I worked 20 hours a week. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So it becomes, I don't know, it gives you direction in life. You know what I mean? Like a GPS. And
Right.
it's a lot simpler to be able to not wonder and going, what do I do? Where do I go? It's more directional and it's more empowering to move on in life.
Mhm. So, are you somebody who sets your goals at the beginning of a certain time of the year, and then you look at those quarterly? Like, how often do you reevaluate how it's working and what you value is happening?
Well, so it depends on the goal, you know what I mean? And I look, one of the things that I do at the end of the year is revalue my vision, look at my vision. So that's
Hmm.
the first thing, right? Do I need to update my vision? If I reach certain things, those kinds of things. And from that point on, based on the priority, I go set goals for it, right? And I'm more concerned about, in order for me to live that vision element, to achieve that vision element, I ask the question not so much how do I do it, because that's what most people do when they set up goals. I look from the perspective, okay, what is it that I'm going after? Like the book. I'll give you an example for the book. When I
Hmm.
finally wrote the book, I wanted to release it. And, in fact, on the vision, said to myself, it's an international bestseller. Had no idea how that's going to happen. I had no clue, no context, no nothing. So I asked, like, what is it? So it's a number one international bestseller. Number two is who can help me? So I started asking, who do I know in my life that I can talk to that would help me in this some form of, so I started sharing with people in my life. One of the people, her name is Jen. We talked at one point and she says, well, I know this guy who's a publisher. I connect you with him if you want. I connected, reached out to him, ended up getting signed by this publishing company. It's like a hybrid publishing company, Morgan James Publishing. By the way, they're pretty great, and connected with them. So there is the who. And then why do I want this? Why? Well, why is this important for me to do that? Because when you have this why behind it, when you have that strong, juice that's pulling you to reach that goal, then you start acting, right? And then what ends up happening is the last thing is by when, right? You put some kind of a deadline in place. So now I
Hmm.
have those pieces, and then I work my way backwards to see, okay, what do I need to do? What needs to happen now? And then I just start executing, connecting with people and those kinds of things. So I review them. I would say like it depends, like sometimes it's bi-weekly, sometimes once a month, sometimes once a quarter, but it depends on the type of a goal, how big it is, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah, that makes sense, because if you're writing a book, you're not going to be able to handle that and get it done in, you know, maybe a couple of weeks. It's got to be a long-term goal that you work on.
Yeah. So,
Yep. Okay. Okay. So, knowing how these 7 drivers can affect somebody, would you
mhm.
say that all 7 play a part, or would you say that the average person might have 2 or 3 drivers that they need to consider?
So that's a great question. Every single person in the world is being driven by every single one of these drives. The difference is that for one person like me, there are usually one, two, three that emerge among all of them, and every other one is kind of not as big of a deal. Same thing for you,
Mhm.
right? So,
Hmm.
they're like, one is certainty, comfort, right? Meaning we have to have some kind of comfort in life, some kind of certainty in life, right? Another one is variety. There's uncertainty because if we knew everything, how it's going to go, when it's going to happen, it would be pretty boring. So we need some variety, right? Sometimes the problems that we get in life, we call them problems, but those are actually surprises that we just don't like, right? So there's the variety aspect. Then you have the feeling important, feel like I matter, feel like I'm significant, right? That's another driver. Then you have love and connection because we want to be connected. We are meant to be living by ourselves. We are meant for being a community. Connection is important. Growth is important. Contribution is connected to be able to help other people. And faith is connected. So, for one person like me, what's really important is the faith aspect and is the contribution, and it's the significance is in there too. For you, it might be something else. So it varies from person to person, but we're all using them in some shape or form.
Gotcha. So the hierarchy could be different for everybody, but they're all a part of what is motivating us and driving us.
Yep, that
Got
is
it.
true.
Okay. All right. So what's next for you? What's on the horizon? What's your next mountain?
Well, my next mountain, yeah, I know those mountains never disappear, do they? Yeah, they're constantly there,
Mm-mm.
right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just spread the message of the book to be able to help other people. And I want to. My goal is to reach 10,000 entrepreneurs and business owners because I think they're the people who make the big impact in communities and our countries and things like that. And I'm entrepreneur myself. I'm a business owner myself, so I get what it takes to get there. And having that impact. And sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes we feel like what are we doing here? So, the book, I want to impact that community, bring the authenticity to individual business owners, entrepreneurs, because when they do that, then families get impacted, then communities get impacted, and so forth. So that's my big mountain right now that I'm climbing actively.
I like that. Yeah. It's a ripple effect, right? If we can put
Hmm.
out something that supports small business owners in the world, it's going to help our communities and eventually the world. So that is a great focus for the world that we're in right now because it can, it definitely can improve, right?
That is true. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So do you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
Well, I would just say, obviously, I would love to, for someone to pick up the copy of the book. But more importantly, I would say is this: don't be afraid to be authentic. I think it's really takes a lot of courage for people to get back to their truth, to the authenticity, and discovering what that is, and talking to people. I think in today's world, with all the technology that we have, think about it. I can talk to someone right now in this very moment across the entire world, right? So we are more connected than anyone ever. But at the same time, I think we're very disconnected. So go ahead and talk to someone, reach out to someone because you never know what's going on in their story. And I think we all need that. We need that, the ability to be able to say hi and we see someone walking down the street or in a store or wherever in the gym, talk to them. You might be surprised what their story is and you might be able to impact them in some shape or form. So be that blessing, be that ripple effect, and start with you and start with your own family and see what may end up happening for others.
That's a great message. Well, I think this is going to be something that is evergreen. This is something that people can continue to come back to and think about what's driving them right now. What do they need to think about? What do they need to focus on? What do they need to rediscover to be more authentic?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time and thank you for coming on the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you guys thought that that was a grounding conversation like I did. It was great to hear from Peter about the strategies that he uses to start his day and how he works with people all over the world to build the life they truly want. I hope this episode gave you permission to pause, reflect, and reconnect with your authentic self. Because when you truly know who you are, that's when everything else begins to align. Peter's message is a great reminder that success doesn't have to come at the cost of your peace, your family, your health, right? Your overall well-being does not have to suffer for you to be successful. And in fact, he says If you do less, you will attract more. You will be more successful, which totally aligns with my approach of go slow to go fast. So if this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And keep sharing these conversations. Until next time, the light in me honors the light in you. And as you head into the rest of your week, let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast, and thanks for listening.